Tuesday, just after 6 p.m., and this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I want to thank Sister Marino and Brother Barry for the previous show. It was lovely music they were playing, Brother Barry's music. This is Brother Sard, or Sard you can call me as well. I'm going to be joined by Gregory very soon. I'll just put him online in a moment. So this is the Spiritual Discussion Program, and on Tuesday evenings the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And we have a two topic every week. The topic for tonight is true help in these troubled times. Okay, here you go. Gregory is going to be online in a minute. Hopefully he's going to join us any moment now. Hello, Gregory, are you there? We're trying to put you online now. Let me just try one more moment, see if he's there. Okay, we're just waiting for Gregory to join us. So in the meantime, I'm going to read you what is the Grail message. What is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is the spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'm just going to try and get Brother Gregory back. Let's see if he's there. 1 second. Hello, Gregory?
Hello?
You can hear me?
Hello?
Hello, Gregory, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, very good, we can hear you. So I'm just going to continue with what I was saying and then I'll welcome you.
Right.
I would like to give a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author of the Grail message. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, the topic for tonight is true help in these troubled times. You can join us in our discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in the studio in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 44 79 444 313 66. Gregory, welcome to the show. Please tell us where you are and how's the weather there?
Well, I'm in Lund in Sweden. It's very bright and cool.
Cool, okay.
So it's been a nice day today.
All right, so welcome to the show. This is Sard. I'm in the studio here in London. The weather here has been overcast but warm. It's a change from the weekend. We had really warm weather in London for the Easter weekend. So yes, but still warm. And another thing I want to let the listeners know, listeners, this is our 3rd anniversary of this show on Bless Radio. We started on the 20th of April, 2016. So that's a good sort of anniversary to celebrate. And just to remind you again, the topic for tonight, it is true help in these troubled times. Now, Gregory, when you look at that title, true help in these troubled times, first of all, I want to talk about the troubled times. Yes, we are in troubled times, and maybe we've always been in troubled times. So is there anything special about the troubled times of today?
Thank you very much for that particular question. Is there anything special about the troubled times of today? First, one has to look at examine the meaning of troubled times. Troubled times here in the physical, what one sees or experiences physically, and troubled times in non-physical, one might as well say spiritual. What one sees or observes on a daily basis are only the manifestations of what had taken place in the non-earthly. So, if there are areas of catastrophe and commotion, then whatever we observe here in the physical is only a precipitation of that. What is different in these times is that the frequency of occurrence of these catastrophes, of this chaos, has increased dramatically. That is the difference. Whereas in the past, it took years before things like this, either earthquakes or financial collapse or quarrels and battles between tribes. It took quite some time. But now, with all the technologies which the current man or the present day man has, we still find that there is a large number of commotion present in our lives. So there's a big difference between the past and the present.
Thank you for that, Gregory. There's a number of things you've said there which I'd like to explore more. One of the things you said was the earthly situation, if I put it like that, is a consequence of the non-earthly how you put it, not earthly, or maybe I could use the word spiritual. You did mention that as well, from spiritual activities. So what you're saying is the cause of the material, earthly events is the source of that is the spiritual. Could you please explain that a bit more? How can that be? What makes what is the spiritual activity that's causing the earthly activity to manifest?
Well, thanks for asking these questions. I was very careful when one mentioned non-earthly. When it is said non-earthly, it doesn't necessarily mean it is spiritual. For the classification of creation is such that starting from an earthly point of view, we have here the physical. The non-physical could also be the ethereal or generally the world of matter. And above the world of matter is the world of the animistic. And above the world of the animistic is the spiritual. Although we do have that activities of the spiritual impact on the world of matter and also impact on physical occurrence that you have here. For instance, when you have laziness, indolence of the spirit, it has a dire impact here on the physical, in which the capabilities granted to man, that is one's intuition and also the intellect, which intellect is supposed to serve as the handyman for the spirit, once that is not in consonance with the demands of the spirit, or if the spirit is not energetic enough to make itself felt, what then happens is that activities are then controlled by the intellect. Because the intellect hasn't got the foresight or has a very limited scope of vision, most of the time it goes beyond bound and creates all sorts of confusion because too much is demanded of it. So that is how these things are. But the key thing here is that there is a need to understand the structure of creation. And above this, the laws of creation through which these structures came into existence. By structure, we mean not only the physical structure which we perceive with our so-called five senses, but also the structure which lies above the earthly. All right, like we mentioned, the ethereal world, also the animistic world, or generally the world of matter, and then the animistic world, and above that, the spiritual world. Even above the spiritual world is the divine. But all these have to be put in their rightful place in a well-ordered structure such that man here on earth can comprehend it if he strives to comprehend it in the right way. So what we find is that within the scheme of things, activities abound, which then impact here physically, and because threads have been formed which collide, which oppose each other, we now have so much confusion, be it in the financial sector or things like earthquake, or confusion even amongst nations, not to talk of health-wise. So all these things must be viewed from a non-earthly point of view, while looking at the final effect on the earthly.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Again, I know you have explained a lot there, and still I would like to go deeper in that. So so you've given us a structure now of creation, starting from, like you said, from the matter, or let's say physical matter, physical world, and then the next one being ethereal, which is also part of matter, and then you mentioned about the animistic, followed by the spiritual, and then the divine. And obviously we know in our many shows that as a human beings, we originate from the spiritual. And you said there has been an indolence in the spiritual that has led to confusion and let's say chaos. I just want to get clarification on that. Is that confusion happening in the spiritual, or let's say indolence, is happening in the spiritual world, and then that is being transmitted into animistic, into ethereal, and then to the matter? Or is that a misunderstanding?
There is some form of misunderstanding. Consider the scenario where the spirit, that is the inner core of man, is not active enough, does not exert itself enough to understand what lies around all the structure of creation. Because of that, it's unable to sort of make itself known. Whereas we have here on it the human intellect. The intellect then takes over and, assumes full control. It doesn't mean that the activities of the spirit is what have been translated or been transformed or precipitated here on the earthly. What has happened is that the human intellect has taken over and has then sown seeds, which it must then reap. But had the spirit been active enough, had it moved away from that indolence by exerting itself in the right way, many of these catastrophes, many of this confusion could have been avoided. So we have on one hand the spirit not active enough, and on the other hand the intellect being overactive. Much of what is being discussed here can be found in the work In the Light of Truth. What we are mentioning now is only a very limited part of it, which is based on our current understanding. But should someone be bold enough to examine the work by themselves, they will come to much finer clarity.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, as Gregory has mentioned, we are only introducing this knowledge of the Grail message in the light of truth to you, and so really you should pick it up yourself to really get the proper picture for yourself. So if you would like to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that: www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. So, Gregory, what you have said, in a way, I will say most people are not aware of these things. About the indolence of the spirit and the, let's say, the dominating role, or the role that the intellect plays, and even interferes with the spirit. So, I would say most people are not even aware of that, and so it sounds like when we talk about this topic tonight, which is true help in these troubled times, we need first help in understanding who we are and the world in which we live. Never mind, developing our talents, or finding a job or work that that uses our talents, or do something that we are passionate about. Because life, people want to enjoy and they want to grow in themselves. And here you seem to be pointing to that before we even get to that point, we are missing, let's say, the knowledge of life. And it seems we're already helpless before we step out, which is, I must say, sounds really quite distressing, actually. Now, of course, you pointed out the Grail messages points to that knowledge of developing ourselves, to finding this, as you said, structure of this creation and the natural knowledge, natural laws, becoming familiar with the natural laws. So, what I want to ask here is, how does a person, let's say, who's never come across the Grail message, or never get to hear about the Grail message, or any such knowledge that we have talked about, how would they get to know this? Because it seems quite essential that we must find out who we are, what our abilities are, and what the mechanism of this world is. How would we discover that if somebody didn't share that with us?
In the first instance, the discussions we have a foundation which is spiritual, because the walk in the light of truth brings clarity and knowledge and deep insight and wisdom about the spiritual. The works of Christ, or the statement of Christ, which says, "Seek and you shall find." I think that gives a precise answer to what the human spirit needs to do. To seek, in this sense, is in the spiritual, not just something we find intellectual. A slight diversion, a picture one intends to paint, is the title of this discussion, which is more or less the seeking help in these troubled times. For many, they are seeking help only for material wealth. So one has to differentiate between that which is material and that which is spiritual. For some that have held on to the material because that is where they wish to seek, where they have sharpened their intellect, there are many who are unable to achieve what they have set out to do. Because they have not been able to do that, they become very bitter. On the other hand, There are others who have set out to achieve material wealth and position, and they have succeeded to a large extent. These other ones become, to a large extent, unless they become humble spiritually, they are likely to become arrogant and look down haughtingly on many who are unable to achieve what they themselves have achieved. On both sides, these are dangerous, and the help which should be brought to them, they now consider to be only that which will make them wealthy. Whereas what is being discussed in these discussions we are engaged in is spiritual help, which help will enable the human spirit to understand why it has incarnated on earth, what it has come to do, and when or whither it will go when the time allocated for it here on earth is over, such that the path that it has created for itself will lead it home consciously. So one has to differentiate very carefully. As long as the human spirit seeks, not the intellect, spiritual seeking grants one the opportunities to experience not only spiritually but also materially in such a way that the experience which the intellect has gone through are passed on to the back brain and thence to the spirit. There the spirit will make use of these experiences. There the spirit, because it has a wealth of experience, it becomes wealthy, for it's able to use these wealth of experience to move on to higher realms in a conscious way, such that when the time comes, it is able to sever itself and move towards home, the paradise of man, from whence it had left as an unconscious spirit germ. So spiritual seeking is different from what most of the time is being discussed, where the seeking one most of the time only looks at the material part of things and wants to have so much, albeit just money, such that it doesn't need to exert itself. So how should the spirit seek? The spirit seeks by striving to know more about the structure of creation, to know why it has incarnated, whether it be in suffering or in joy, in good health or not. These experiences help to mature the inner part of man, which is of spirit. These experiences sort of form him in such a way that he is able to understand creation the way creation is, and therefore is able to form his paths in such a way that is able to give gratitude for the opportunities which has come his way, and for those, give gratitude to those and the source that made it possible for it to experience in these times. Whether the times are troubled or not, stands in the position to be of immense benefit to the spirit.
Thank you for that comprehensive picture, Gregory. From what you've been saying, it sounds like the seeking is an individual journey, and not so much like well, I don't want to really say follow a particular faith or teaching, but because we have obviously in the world lots of religions or spiritual teachings and so on out there, but how you've been talking, it sounds like everybody's on his own journey, and it's not about following one teaching or another teaching. It's just experiencing the world by yourself. So is that right? You have to just find your own way?
Well, each person was born to experience. So each person has to make his or her own path. It's not a matter of group path. I must follow this group. For the demands of each spirit is different. Each person is different. Therefore, one needs to find out what works for him or her through personal interaction. For if one then follows another person, it's like you are walking on crutches because you are using the experiences of that particular person, which is not meant for you. So each person is on its own in order to experience creation. You cannot experience creation through another person. You need to experience it by yourself. Even if you take the experiences of others, it doesn't mean that you see these things in the same way. So each person also radiates into the whole. And because each person contributes to what lies around or what also embraces him, each person is able to see things or smell things or experience things differently. So each person is unique, and the experiences which they need, as long as they are striving accordingly, following the laws of creation, the helps within creation will ensure that what they need, they will have in accordance with the perfect justice. For he said, seek and you shall find.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program on Bless Radio, and the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. The topic we're discussing tonight is true help in these troubled times, and we've said it in the show already that this help we're talking about is spiritual help. So you can join us in our discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp, and if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Gregory, we've talked about this journey our spiritual journey of seeking to be an individual journey and experiencing ourselves and growing ourselves. Now, and the help, we've said there's help in the Grail message for people who wish to, explore this and discover it. Now, I want to, let's say, look at what Jesus said. You said, seek and you shall find. And there are many things, let's say, in the Bible which are meant for our spiritual help and guidance. So what I want to ask you now is, Jesus has prophesied that something like this, that there will be well, let me give you a quote actually from where something which Paul said, actually, the Apostle Paul, that he said, what we know in part, when the whole has come, the whole has come, we will do away with the part. I'm sorry, I'm not able to remember exactly the quote there, and please could you tell us what he meant in that, what he was saying there, Apostle Paul?
The Apostle Paul only spoke of personal recognition. The Apostle Paul did not speak roundly of the laws through which everything came into existence in creation. Therefore, when he said, when that which is full comes, that which is full is complete, and that which is full is perfect. It forms the basis of everything that exists in creation. But it is presumptuous to say that, that which is full is in my religion or is not in my religion. Whatever is said, whatever is presented must be examined in full, must be examined by the Spirit, must be examined through one's intuitive perceptions. Rigorous examination. First, to understand whether works like in the Light of Truth, the Grail message, which speaks and elucidates the laws of creation, whether indeed these are the laws of creation. This demands rigorous examination in spirit, not just accepting or rejecting. For only a spirit that is fully mobile and alert is capable of doing that. Only when it has convinced itself, not a matter of belief, which basically is what Paul was referring to. For when they spoke out of their personal recognition, out of belief. But that which is whole, when it comes, it will guide one into all things. Not part, but all things. It is wonderful to be able or to be permitted to put the work in the light of truth into that category, to examine it rigorously, to find out if that statement is true.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now, this seems a little bit out of context, but I'm going to just, it's a question a listener has sent, and I would like to just put it forward. So it says, John the Baptist spoke of washing one's garments. What did he really mean?
Again, these answers to these can be found in the work In the Light of Truth, as long as one examines it aright. In the brief discussion we started not long ago, we mentioned that the journey which the human spirit started as a spirit germ started from its realm in paradise, the paradise of mind, as an unconscious spirit germ. And in order to become conscious, it needed to move away from that particular realm, because the motion, the activities right there were so intense that it needed to move away and come to experience gradually. Therefore, it moved first downwards to the animistic realm before it entered into the world of matter. When it left the spiritual realm, it took on a garment which is consistent with the environment of the animistic. So that is his first garment. It sank further to the world of matter, and it took up another garment, say in the ethereal. And by the time it came to the world, say, of matter here on earth, it took on another garment which it uses to experience. That is the physical body, which you and I recognize. In the process of experiencing, you have scenarios where it soils these garments. For it to be able to go back consciously, there is the need to wash these garments clean. That is, to go through experiences and recognition so as to purify these garments, so as to be able to return home as a self-conscious human spirit and to participate in the joys and happiness back home. So when John the Baptist mentioned the purification or the cleansing of one's garment, he only meant the garments it has taken on, not only the physical, but also the non-physical garments which the human spirit had taken on and had soiled due to its experiences, not only here on earth, but also in the ethereal world. And there are many gradations where it could experience. So those are the ones that need purification.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now I want to look at, let's say, some earthly things and see if we can see some spiritual understanding, or way forward from them. So, for example, let's say people are suffering they have an addiction. It could be smoking, could be gambling, it can be a lot of anything really. I know it's an earthly thing, but it does, let's say, tie up the the human being in a very strong way. And as I say, this doesn't make a person necessarily a bad person, that somebody's smoking or necessarily, they're not, let's say, causing harm to others necessarily with this sort of habits or behaviors. But it is, of course, quite destructive for the individual concerned. So, and I know we've talked about help here. Today's topic is true help in these troubled times, and which we said is a spiritual help. But obviously, when people are suffering some earthly troubles, I just want to explore, can there be a solution or way forward in a spiritual way out of this earthly problem or trouble? So, yeah, so with regard to this, let's say, addiction, which could be smoking, it could be gambling, could be many other things, is there, I mean, obviously we know there, let's say, there are people, there's, how can I say, organizations helping these people to give up these habits that they've got. But would you say there's also some, let's say, a better solution from a spiritual point of view that could help them?
Views from the spiritual last much longer than the earthly simple helps which many consider. For there is a need to know the repercussions of one's activities, how it may impact on others, and therefore in reciprocity also impact on the person. There's also there's the need to know how things like you have mentioned, gambling or smoking, how it impacts on one's ethereal body. For most of these things are self-harm. And once the human personality is honest and serious enough, it can find a way to sever itself and move away from such vices. But the problem is very simple, because it does not wish to, or the deep within, it doesn't exert itself to sever itself from all this. Take, for instance, someone who smokes. That person may have as many patches on their skin, may have as many other things which you find around. It helps, in quotes. But unless deep within, that person makes the decision to move away and never go back to that, you find it's like, having a tap root somewhere, and then the fibrous roots still bring in the germs, which subsequently is going to affect the whole. So it is first the inner man. Whatever it does, whatever activity is engaged in, the repercussions which is brought about through the laws through which he himself came into existence, those repercussions will come back. The laws of reciprocity, because he or she has sown, and as a man has sown, or as a woman has sown, so shall they reap. So the key help must be from the person. Of course, there are scenarios where the person is, in quotes, may not be strong enough, where others may decide to offer some help by external means. All these things still count. But once the human spirit has sown, he or she needs to experience it, such that after tasting of that initial desiring, it may then make a decision whether it needs to continue or to stop. When that decision is made, gradually it moves away. It stops sort of pumping energy into those base vices. And because there is no more nutrient being pushed across this baseness, gradually they dry up. The picture one would like to paint is not even good or near enough as the constructions, as the stones, the building blocks, which had been hewn perfectly, which many will find when they are bold enough to examine the work in the light of truth. For there it contains everything.
Thank you so much, Gregory, in so much going deeply into this point of what addiction is, and well, let's say not what addiction is, but how the way forward is. And as you point out, really, is in the end, it's a decision to do something or not to do something. And once it's really a spiritual decision, then that is the strong one that can pull you out of whatever situation you're in. So thank you for making that point. Another thing that is in the news recently, actually, in London, we've got this protest group called Extinction Rebellion, and they've been protesting for at least a week now in London. They're like a Save the Earth group, and basically they've been saying that they've been campaigning, let's say in the normal ways of writing to their MPs and politicians to take measures to save the earth, where environment is, as we know, is not the climate change. A lot of things are going on, and yes, they are taking steps, but it seems for this protest group it's not serious enough and urgent enough that is necessary to actually make a change to how we live, because they believe that if those changes do not happen immediately or very, in a very strong manner, in soon, then the future generations are going to be in peril. And they've been doing some dramatic sort of street protests with, blocking the roads and gluing themselves onto the road and things like this. Sounds a bit funny, but they've been doing all that sort of thing. Now, again, Gregory, this is an earthly activity, not a spiritual one, as we clearly know. But these people, obviously, they do care about the future, or let's say on the earth, and the future generation that is going to come. So what I'd like to ask you there, do you think these groups are helping in any way to awaken humanity and maybe slightly awaken them spiritually, or is it just simply an earthly. I mean, it's obviously you can see it's like a good volition to look after the planet. But do you think there's really any? I could ask, is this the right way to go about what their aim is? But also, is it really helpful to awaken humanity? Let me say that way.
In the first instance, there is some effort. Every little helps. Drawing attention to what may happen or what is very likely to happen. It's good to look back a bit. Today, you look at the Thames that runs through London. There was a time, maybe about 100, 200 years ago, where the sewage were washed into the Thames until it became so bad and the whole place stank. When it started, many did not think about it. But when the impact started manifesting, then the government had to take action, because they then realized that there was a need to tidy up the Thames. The same thing happens when you have all this manufacturing belching out so much smoke. There are cities like in India or in other countries that are sorely affected by this. So it is good that some groups draw our attention to these things. It helps. But that does not suffice. For there are other forces that needs to be brought into being, into the equation. What one sees basically are the final effects. The forces one is referring to here are thought forms. The way we care to think. We do not really value the environment. First, we pollute our nearest environment in our thoughts. Or do we wish to deny that our thoughts do not have impact on ourselves? When one considers that our thought forms has direct impact on the person, and when you now have a collective of such thoughts, deadly, or of such ignorant thoughts, which are flung around, when you have an accumulation of such thoughts, then you have the quagmire which has been brought into being or which has been precipitated into being. The same happened long ago with the so-called slave trade. For first, it is the thoughts. These thoughts take root, and then the human spirit goes forward and keeps implementing things. For he or she is not really bothered until he finds the terrible consequences that are brought forward. So, first, it is good for many others to draw our collective attention, but it's also important to change the way we think, change the way we do things. And that is why in the walk in the light of truth, it is said, keep the heart of your thoughts pure. I will not complete it because there is a need for whoever is listening to examine for themselves, such that they themselves should know how to proceed.
Thank you, Gregory, for that. And dear listeners, as Gregory mentioned, we want to invite you to read the Grail message for yourself. And if you would like to get a copy, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the full title is In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. And you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. And the topic we're discussing tonight is true help in these troubled times. If you'd like to join us with any question or comments, the number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. And if you're outside of UK, you can you can call us, text us, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, I want to explore another earthly sort of situation, which is in the news. When civilians are in need abroad, let's say through a war, especially in a place which is far away, and I'm thinking here of, for example, in Yemen, where I know the Yemen is under attack, from sort of some alliance together, and then the civilians are being suffering the consequences of these attacks, and obviously they're not able to protect themselves. Many are starving, especially children. They don't have shelter, food. So many things are not there, and and everything we have been saying, we talk about the natural laws and the structure of creation, and we say, that what is happening on the material level is a consequence of the non-earthly activities, which includes the spiritual, but not necessarily only spiritual. So what I'm going to ask you, Gregory, really is, when people are suffering like this, I don't want to call them innocent, because nobody can say that, why somebody is in that situation. Each person has a different sort of explanation why they might be in that situation. Not they won't know, but necessarily, but the reason for it could be different for each individual, even though it's a collective suffering. So my question is really, we see these sort of events. Should we, as individuals and outside countries, intervene with help, with aid, or something like that? Because if the laws are perfect, I'm not saying people should suffer because they're suffering because of their consequences, but what help should be provided, really? That's the question I'm asking for such people, because at the end of the day, it's only human beings who are really active on this earth. We are the ones who actually make things happen on this earth. So should the people who are living outside of this area where the suffering is going on, should they get involved or not?
That question, the solution was provided long ago when Christ was asked, "And who is my neighbor?" And the answer was very clear, distinct, when he said, he gave the example of someone who was beaten, injured. A priest came, saw this, and turned his face and went away. A Levite came, did the same. Then came the Good Samaritan, and he asked, of these, he did not wait for an answer. That person who was beaten, of course, one way or the other, might or might not have given rise to these. But yet, the one who spent his time and energy to take care of him, Christ asked that question. Of these, who is the neighbor? My response to it is, go thee and do likewise. Do not wait. When one is unwell, this unwellness came through, one way or the other, the ignorance on how one should take care of one's physical body. Yet there are doctors that we go to get instruction. There are many others we go to. We do not wait and say, oh, because we have sinned against our physical body, or we have this pain, or we have headache, therefore we have violated the laws, therefore we shouldn't find ways of turning it round, the other way around. Wherever one sees or experiences suffering, that is a reminder that we ourselves should strive never ever to inflict such unholy condition, unhelpful condition on our fellow human spirits who, like ourselves, have come here, this realm, to experience in order to go back home as a self-conscious human spirit. Here it is one for all and all for one. So, whether it be Yemen or some other countries, evil perpetuates when good people do nothing. When we have disease spreading, many quickly act in such a way as to prevent it from spreading by finding cures, by taking care. That is why hospitals were set up. So it would be foolish to ignore the suffering of one's fellow human spirit and say, oh, they deserve it, let them suffer. Before long, that suffering which the human spirit is running away from, because for now it has enough to eat and drink, that suffering will visit his own neighborhood. For had he taken the opportunity to avail itself to be of help to its neighbor, just like was mentioned in the Good Samaritan, then many a returning threat which would have sunk him would have been severed. But Christ gave the perfect example, which one cannot deny.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this, let's say, lovely analogy of comparing, let's say, the suffering of human beings in a, let's say, war condition with the health, because nobody question when you're ill why you're ill. You want to do something about your illness, and people, if you cannot, somebody will help you. So thank you for making it in such a clear way, how to answer that question. So thank you for that. Now, I'm not trying to be devil's advocate, but just I have a sort of another variation of this question that I put about Yemen. So we know also there's another country called Venezuela where people are suffering there as well, and the government and outside people want to help, send in medicines and medical supplies and other things. I know it's not quite a war, maybe call it internal strife, and well, people are suffering financially and otherwise in that country. Somehow the economy's got ruined, and the government of that country refuses to let the outside help come in. They're thinking that this outside help, there's a agenda behind it, that they want to remove the government rather than actually help the people. There might be something, or let's say somebody's behind the help. There's people are planning more ways to remove the government of that country. So in that situation, should people still help the people from the people from the outside trying to help the people who are suffering in that country? Because again, it looks like they might be intervening or interfering.
It was said, either from biblical standpoint, do your best and leave the rest. Angels do no more. For those of good volition, either with good thoughts or with materials, whatever they can do, maybe even if they live outside or inside, they should do the best they can. But above all, to learn from the current conditions, to learn the spiritual lessons, how bad governance can bring a country to its knees. Bad governance in a massive scale. You can also have bad governance within the family. You can have bad governance within the institution or institutions. The necessary lessons need to be learned. As soon as the lessons are learned, then the human spirit can move forth. Whether it be bitter experiences or sweet experiences, they are useful to the spirit to learn in the right way, having the right attitude. One would not say, oh, I am ill. Okay, because my parents do not want help to reach me, I remain complacent. That doesn't happen. So each person should do the best they can. When the time is ripe enough, within the people, these bars that tend to hold many a person will implode. With minimal effort, they will vanish. This has happened to nations. Nations from the East, nations within Africa, in many places. So the lessons are there for one to learn. But one should do the best one can, the best intellectually, the best one can also physically, and the best one can spiritually. This demands so much from the person that in the process of doing one's best, one matures and values the time and space granted to it for maturity here on earth.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Again, very good comprehensive answer you gave there. Now, another thing that's happened these last few days in the news in Sri Lanka, as you know, Easter Sunday, there were multiple attacks on churches during the services, and also in many hotels there in Colombo. People getting killed, hundreds of people getting killed, and although it's not been officially now I think it has been. They have announced this extremist, Muslim or Islamic group is behind it, they think. And obviously it appears it can't be just only them local ones. There must be outside help as well. It was so well organized with all those weapons. My question on this is, Gregory, there's in the world there seem to be a lot of, let's say, minority groups or peoples, with this violent or hateful attitude. For some reason they can't tolerate anybody else but their own people, and they have to carry out, or they seem to think this is the way to solve a problem, is to wipe out people. Especially, the people didn't even do anything directly to them, but they feel that they have to wipe out a particular group of people. It's not a group in this case. In one case it is the Christians, but also it was people in the hotel. So maybe they had you can't necessarily say what the group was. Maybe it's just Westerners or whatever they had in their heads they were thinking. So what my question is, Gregory, there, we're supposed to live in peace, but then there's some people obviously determined not to live in peace. So the people who wish to live in peace, what can we do about these people who are not, who don't want to live in that way, and or just can't agree with something, with a different way, if somebody wants to live a different way? Should they be hunted down? And people need to be new. I was going to use the word re-educated, because maybe they're indoctrinated in one way of thinking. So what can be done about such things with people like this?
Thanks for this particular question. First, peace does not mean the absence of activities. Peace spiritually means the getting involved in real activities which brings joy and happiness to many. This has to be enforced. This requires a lot of effort, which efforts might come through education. In fact, it is the concepts which we hold within ourselves which either open the paths or shut the path, which we will have to follow here or hereafter. For many who carry out such violent activities, which violent activity they prefer because it justifies their distorted understanding of what has been passed on to them. The remarkable thing in these matters is that they wish to ascend, and yet they do not inflict this violence upon themselves or upon their loved ones. So common sense would have shown that these are deluded ones. It is very clear that they will have to reap in abundance what they have inflicted on others. Had they inflicted happiness and joy on others, they themselves will have to reap happiness and joy. But since they have inflicted pain on others, it is not difficult to understand what awaits them when their time comes, or what awaits them in the future, here or hereafter. The government agencies can only do their best. But the key thing is a common understanding, educating the human spirit to understand that whatever they put out there for others, in reciprocity, is going to fall back on them. They have sought like seeking, and they will find in abundance that violence which they themselves have inflicted. For thoughts of a like nature will precipitate in a realm where they themselves will have to experience it until it falls away from them. If through many teachings they are unable to come to such understanding, then it means they haven't either read their literature in the right way, or they have ignored that which would be of benefit. So many had better be careful when they take pleasure in inflicting pain and sorrow on others, for they will not arrive at that realm where there is peace, because they themselves have sown discord and wickedness and sorrow. Sorrow will beget sorrow, whereas peace will beget peace. This they can understand. What has happened in these areas is only part of the quickening of events, where much that is destructive has to be done away with. But it is hoped that many will learn from this, such that they will only plant flowers to ensure that their neighbors enjoy peace, because they themselves wish peace.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Another thing I wanted to make a note of, because Sri Lanka is, let's say, well, there's a mixture of communities there, and I'm quite, from some of the Sri Lankans I know, they celebrate every religious holiday of each of the religious people that are there, each of the religions, even though Buddhism is the biggest religion, 70% are Buddhists. There are Hindus there, Muslims there, even and Christians there, and each of them, they have their holiday celebrated in that country. So it's quite a liberal or tolerant country, and so most of the people you see, they're not. I mean, they've had, as we know in the past, they had terrorism in the Tamil population, fighting the local, let's say the original people from the Sinhalese population. They had fight there, but even when that ended, and I think even before, it was not that it was there was peacefulness in that country. So for it to happen in that place, it's there's not many extreme people there. That's the unusual thing to which seems a surprise when it happened in that country, because other places it is already known that such things have happened, and here, apart from that Tamil problems they had long time back, or 10 years ago when it finished, there's never been any sort of, at least not anything obvious as this that has happened now. So it's catch everybody by surprise when we see this sort of events. So yeah, dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And the topic we're discussing tonight is true help in these troubled times. And you can join us in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you would like a copy of the Grail message, you can also go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Now, Gregory, we've talked about things that have been happening in the news, and what I wanted to talk about a little bit in more general. Let's say something happens similar to these events you're talking about, really dreadful sort of emergencies or just terrible suffering. And now what I want to ask is, in this situation, when it befalls someone, would you say that a prayer to God can get you out of this or help you out of it, this situation? Obviously, I'm not trying to say this like a magic wand where suddenly, apart from that, you're trapped and suddenly you find a way to escape, let's say, from an attack. But in the other situations where people are suffering, which is like starving or, basically war conditions where you're just trapped, and obviously it's not going to be the next day suddenly you're going to be released. But would you say a prayer to God can help in this situation? And what I mean by that is not just to give him the calmness. Maybe I do mean calmness, but I mean to actually get out of this situation.
When the need is greatest, many a time the human condition or the human spirit acknowledges that the intellect or the intellectual sophistry cannot even apply, and in giving up, realizing its incapability, it becomes humble, and therefore the soil within it is ready. And because it senses that there is a source that is capable of helping, of supporting, of strengthening. It opens to this source, not questioning it, how the power that streams from on high is going to reach it, the human spirit. Because that soil is ready to receive the help streams in, and many a condition is improved, and many an illness sometimes is alleviated. Many situations, it turns out to be that where the human spirit is happy, and automatically it opens its heart and is filled with praises. For it did not consider that it was possible, but now it was able to experience the power and the goodness that made it possible that such support is granted to it within the schemes of creation. He or she, even after being a sinner, whatever it cares to call itself. But the key to this is that the human spirit opens itself in humility to that power which streams through creation. Because at that point it is seeking in humility. So for many, yes, but they should not expect a solution in accordance with their own intellectual calculation. Again, the bit we have discussed is nothing compared to when the human spirit is bold enough and, like a prayer of need, boldly examines rigorously the work in the light of truth, which shows the human spirit all that it needs for its entire existence, here or hereafter.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now, again, looking at the situation we're living on Earth at the moment, there's always strife, trouble, and so on. And yet we have a prediction that there will be a kingdom of peace for 1,000 years on the earth. And doesn't seem really it can happen with the time that we are, how it is now. So is that really going to happen? And if so, how?
It is quite remarkable that many a human spirit has a longing for peace and tranquility and happiness on earth. But the question that each person must ask himself or herself: who brings the confusion? Is it the animals? Is it the stones? The simple answer is man himself, through his ways or her ways, precipitates this confusion and catastrophes of war, catastrophes of greed. Therefore, if man wishes to experience that which is of tranquil, which is of peace, it has to transform his ways of doing things to suit that in the way creation needs it. For it is man who has caused this confusion. It therefore means that should peace have to be in this earth, in this realm, it must be enforced through the laws of creation through which man came into existence. Its peace being enforced means the disturbing elements be removed forcibly. It therefore means it is man, that personality that precipitates the discord that has to be removed for peace and tranquility and joy and happiness to reign. So, how is it going to happen? Through the activities of men, they eliminate themselves from the possibilities. They separate themselves where they will have to experience what they have advocated for. And in hard experience, they are forced to change for the better. Else, they will have to perish in their conditions. Again, the free will of man is there. And like has been said many a time, to be or not to be has never been a question. How to be, and the how to be is contained in the laws through which, in happiness, granted the human spirit the possibility of how to be. That is how it should be.
Thank you for that, Gregory. It's the way you answer is really, quite clear, that everything is a process, and once we grasp the process, then life makes sense. So thank you for that. Now, another thing, obviously in this show we talk about the Grail message as a knowledge to answer questions of life. And out there, let's say there are many, you could say, spiritual teachers and things have come out in these recent times, let's say leaders and so on, with their own movements and so on. Now, so my question really is, with all this, I don't know how to call it, knowledge, information, or variety of teachings out in the world that are there. So we've got let's say the main religions that people are aware of, but there's also many others who are not so well known, but there are many such groups out there, bringing awareness of life as well in their own way. So my question about that is, Gregory, are these other teachings that have come in recent time, that I'm talking the last 100 years actually, just so people are clear, things have come around, are they useful? Are they misleading? And if they are misleading or something like this, or because sometimes they sound very helpful, but maybe they're setting you on the wrong path. And if that's the case, how do we find out, which one is the right one?
Again, This is a very pertinent question. Everyone must examine that which they take seriously. If a man take religion seriously, then he should examine it. For if one builds a bridge and one does not test the bridge, how can one walk across it and assume that it will not collapse? How can one invite bulldozers to move across that bridge and are happy that that bridge will not collapse? So whatever that comes across to us, as long as we take it seriously and hold it dear to our heart, then we need to examine it. For if we do not examine it, not only materially or intellectually, but also spiritually, then the likelihood is there we will or shall unknowingly allow that which is not in accord with the laws through which we all came into existence to slip through. Therefore, it is very necessary to examine whether it's science, whether it is religion, whether it is culture, to let it come to life and see whether that benefit which enables man to mature, that we brought forth. It is key that to move or to make progress, one needs to have done a previous examination. One needs to have taken one step before it takes another step. In the step in which we are standing, be it the step of science, be it the step of religion, be it the step of so-called culture or the arts, one needs to examine that particular scenario with one's intuition to the depths before one is able to take the other step. For if that is not the case, then you will find that the likelihood is there that you miss out on something. The same thing happens for those who are bold enough to examine this work in the light of truth. In fact, the work from the outset mandates that you examine every word. You allow it to sink into the spirit, which spirit we examine according to its inner capacities. Not only things examined in an intellectual capacity. Only then will it bear the fruits, which one may use here or hereafter. So, it is very clear when it is said, by their activities we shall know them. By the way we have cared to examine or not to examine. That places us in a platform where we have the right concepts through which we are able to make progress. For now it is becoming clear that life on earth is a brief journey, a process which seemed to have started from birth and which does not end at death. For many, they are afraid what comes hereafter. But what comes hereafter depends on how one has lived one's life, how one has sown the seeds, which seeds will mature here or hereafter. So there is the need to be awake. Only the spirit that is awake is capable of examining aright. And that process calls for vigorous examination in everything. One should not take it lightly when it comes from either religion or culture. For we hear so much about religion, many hold on to it and ask no question of themselves.
Thank you so much, Gregory. I'd like to read something from the Grail message for the listeners. As we said, we've been talking about true help in these troubled times. And the true help, you said, is actually seeking. That is the real thing. So there's the first lecture in the Grail message, which is entitled, it's in, the word can be in Old English, but I will say it also in the, let's say, today's English. So the title is, What Seek Ye? Or it could be said, What Seek You? What seek ye? What is all this tumultuous agitation? It permeates the world like a ferment, and a flood of books overwhelms all peoples. Scholars pore over ancient writings, investigating and pondering until spiritually exhausted. Prophets arise to warn, to predict. Suddenly, from all sides, people strive feverishly to spread new light. Thus it rages now over the troubled soul of mankind, not refreshing and invigorating, but scorching, consuming, absorbing the last vestiges of strength still left to the afflicted one in this gloominess of the present time. Here and there also a whispering is heard, rumors of a growing expectation of something impending. Every nerve is restless, tense with subconscious longing. There is a seething and surging, and over everything lies a kind of ominously brooding stupor, fraught with disaster. What must it bring? Confusion, despondency and ruin, unless a mighty hand tears asunder the dark layer that now envelops this terrestrial globe spiritually. With the slimy tenacity of a dirty morass, absorbing and smothering every ascending free light thought before it has even become strong, with the gruesome silence of a swamp, suppressing, disintegrating, and destroying every good volition, even in the bud, before any action can arise from it. But the seeker's cry for light, imbued with strength to cleave through the mire, is turned aside and dies away beneath an impenetrable canopy, assiduously set up by the very people who think they help. They offer stones for bread. Look at the innumerable books. They do not animate. They only weary the human spirit. And this is the proof of the barrenness of all they offer. For whatever wearies the spirit is never right. Spiritual bread immediately refreshes. Truth revitalizes, and light animates. I'm going to stop there. And Gregory, there's something else I wish to read, which is at the beginning of the Grail message, which I think is also appropriate for the listeners. So I'm going to read that, and then we'll close the show for tonight. So this is actually the foreword of the Grail message. This is the first page, you could say, of the Grail message. And it's titled "For Your Guidance." The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth, and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes only through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Abrushin. So, dear listeners, thank you for being with us tonight. On the topic for tonight we had was true help in these troubled times. Hopefully you got some help in understanding about this life and the times we live. Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
Well, one wishes everybody well, and for those of strong volition, let them direct that volition in examining of this work.
Thank you for that, Gregory. So yes, dear listeners, if you want to pick up the Grail message, as Gregory has said and we are saying, you can go to this website. It is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, message, message.com. I wish you all a great week, and God bless. And if you are able to join us next week, please do Will be another topic next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. All the best, everyone. Take care. Bye.